tank top and stitch hat. It's moving time for me, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to sneak away to give you guys some technical analysis for the SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and NVIDIA. And I think we're going to get into AMD real quick right now. So I just wanted to say AMD, I'm not going to like always talk about this stock, but it is showing us a signal that I think is very important and we can pay attention to. And that's why I'm going to put it first, just so everyone is able to see this. Okay, we notice AMD is making these moves higher. We're starting to get into tests of that top of the Bollinger here, and we're running into where there could be some sellers. Okay, now we're seeing that push higher. Sellers haven't stepped in, but if I just go down to a 30-minute real quick, I just wanted to show you guys this MACD down here. And you see this MACD is starting to prove a little bit of a triple divergence on the MACD and RSI at the same time. Okay, so that's something that I'm looking at right now. And I think that this could be a leading signal that AMD is going to sell off from these areas and possibly come down into our previous zone, maybe hinting that the rest of the stocks need to follow this move as well, and maybe even the overall market. As we switch over to the SPY, it's a good thing, you know, before this week even started that we mentioned we might be doing some dinking around in this area, kind of like we did previously, right? So we are expecting this to pull back and carve out some kind of right shoulder at this point, but we did state that we could get that wonky price action up here, and that seems to be happening, and that's overall happening because we need a reason to sell off, right? So once we do get that reason, and Jerome Powell talks tomorrow, and Jerome Powell talks the next day, so maybe that gives us a couple reasons to head to lower levels in the near future. That doesn't mean we can't go a little bit higher, right? We can wick a little bit higher like we did over in this area, and maybe that is just to close this gap up here around that 437, okay? So around 437, we got that gap on this bar. If you want the actual number on the close there, it's 438, 438.64 to close that gap, okay? And maybe that is a good test for us to have before going into an event. And if we just pull up shorter time frames like an hourly, you can see we do have this kind of price action that's just pulling us down. So we could see this start to tick up, right? We could see this tick up one more time, go fill that gap and things like that, give us some kind of divergence on the hourly here before we actually pull back, okay? So these things do take time. Sometimes, a lot of the time, when we're trying to carve out a right shoulder, it can take up to 3 weeks to carve out that right shoulder. So we want to be very patient, but we want to have our heads clear and know that there is Jerome Powell talking tomorrow and the next day, and there's more data coming out throughout the week. Now, even though I'm saying there could be a pullback and we have that data coming out throughout the week and Jerome Powell talking, that could pull us down to lower levels if those numbers do come out as, you know, negative for the market. But right now we are seeing on the Qs, we're getting that breakout of this flag. And if we do pull back after this breakout, a lot of people will think that's a fake out. I actually see it as a good sign that we want to go test some of these highs, right? We want to go test them. So I actually see this as a good sign at this point. If we do see some kind of healthy pullback, then we could maybe, you know, see that start to extend and test some of these highs. I really see this as actual good news for the market, and I won't really see this as a fake out at this point. But I pulled up the hourly on the SPY, and I wanted to pull up the 30-minute on the Qs here. And this is why I'm saying we most likely are going to see a pullback according to at least the short-term indicators, okay? Now, how far that pullback could be, we've already given you those levels, but it's most likely in confluence with this area right in here. So we just noticed on the MACD, though, we do have this pretty dang significant MACD divergence. Okay, we have that divergence there, and it is a little bit, it's a little significant on the RSI. And the fact that it's a little significant on the RSI, we're getting back out of those overbought territory. I think that's good news that we are most likely going to see some kind of pullback. Now we just have to have our levels. I mean, the levels that you can pay attention to where this pullback could stop or start to get some trouble are these gaps, and that's why this is so a very good time to get that pullback, and we'll get some good levels throughout the week that we can pay attention to. All right, on Apple, I did say maybe we do need to come back into that purple zone, but this was how we break out of this zone. Okay, we come out of it, we touch back in it, and then we start to move higher. So we're not surprised that that happened, and we brought out in case this happened. Okay, so in case this happened, we said we're most likely going to test this high. We're going to test the bottom of the Bollinger, so we could head a tiny bit higher. Now, if we do head a tiny bit higher, I would really think that we're leaning towards, you know, some kind of retest or that touch of the purple zone again to really explode higher. Okay, I'm talking about a move like this, where we just went up pretty rapidly up to the 20, we pulled back just into the top of it, and then the bigger move happened. So I'm really looking forward to some kind of pullback in Apple, because I believe the next move is going to be the even stronger one. Now, even though I think that next move is going to be like the stronger one, right? You can see if we just kind of don't even really map this out, we just see that we're really getting tight here, and that we're probably going to see an explosive move soon. And overall, based on the indicators, they would be telling you, hey, you got a pretty flat divergence on the MACD up here, but you do have a decently significant divergence down here on the RSI, on the hourly chart, okay? So the hourly chart here showing that, and I believe once you do get this actual crossing on the MACD, then that might mean that we're actually going to get that full pullback. How low that could actually go, I really like this level of 173.63, like something right in there. It's in confluence with a lot of support in the past, right? You can see these little touches, right? So I really like this level, and you can see how when we broke below it, we bought back above it very fast. So I see this level as pretty important. We rejected from it a few times, and I think that could be a pretty good zone or area to start to acquire some of this if this does start to play out and we're able to remain, somewhat in positive territory after this MACD rolls back over. Tesla, the thing that we liked about Tesla is we got that cross on the MACD down here, but we're actually stalling at the level that we want. And so for this to happen, I'm going to more likely go into the shorter time frames here. So I'm going to just go into an hourly, and we can see this MACD right now, it's in positive territory. We could see one more hip fire move curl up, maybe up to this level here, right? That gap resistance, okay? But overall, this is more how I think the market should be acting, right? We should be stalling up at the actual neckline, kind of like the SPY is, and a lot of stocks are actually, way up here. So I think that we will see some kind of, left, head, and actually even right now this could be your little tiny right shoulder, but I do believe there's a little more work to be done, and we can pull back down a little further, probably to around that 207.42 price point before we actually head higher and see a bigger move in Tesla here. Tesla is the only one that I'm just going to say the bearish side to it, and you can pay attention to this on other stocks, but I just wanted to show you it here. These ones that have the MACD, these lines a little bit closer to that center line, you can see a little bit more dramatic sell-off, okay, because we will be in that negative territory on the MACD down here, so that means the momentum's going down. That means the trend's going down. So if this head and shoulders does not play out and we take out this low, I'd just be drawing myself a little line here, and also just paying attention if we're able to hold up maybe around this 190 level, okay, right in here, that we see this start to roll back over, right? We come down and we roll back over, you'll get a nice triple divergence. And I just wanted to state that because Tesla looks like, it's not going to extreme highs right away, and it's actually holding up at a good level, but it's close to negative territory on the MACD. Amazon just keeps testing that top of that Bollinger, okay? It keeps going up and up, but around here, you can kind of see that momentum starting to die out. This really wasn't, any kind of consolidation at this point. It just seemed like, these last two bars might be that FOMOers kind of getting into this at this point, but I would still pay attention to this high. We could get as high as that high, even gapping higher, and see some kind of sell-off. Overall, though, because this is such an explosive move, we can see those buyers step in a little sooner. So originally, I was paying attention to this level here around that 124, okay? But I believe that this part right here now can become important because it lines up with a lot of these moving averages. It lines up with the gap fill right here, right? So we could actually see, Amazon only come back down to a level of only like 132 before we see some kind of bounce. So I would be looking at this 132. If we do end up like getting some kind of feeble bounce and then going again, then I'd be paying attention to the 124 on Amazon. Now I'm going to pull up Amazon on the 30-minute just to show you this really wonky MACD, right? It's a really wonky MACD, but the important thing here is we're getting closer to that center line, okay? So I am making a little course that goes through these indicators and not just telling you like what MACD stands for and what the lines are, but what they actually do and what things are very important. And a lot of that is around this center line. It's way more important than you think when the trend is in positive up here or negative territory down below that center line. So that's something I'm touching on in the course, and you can see these divergences, right? All these divergences starting to form. You're going to get a bunch of them on the 30-minute in this kind of squeeze here, but that just means the drop could be more significant. So I do look at this level, right around that 132 level. I believe that that's pretty good point to, think of a bounce or something like that. And we could just hold up from that level just because on, something like a 2-hour, we are so in positive territory on the MACD. Okay, we're in positive territory. So if we do get to any of these levels and we start to turn around, you see that MACD cross, I think it's very highly probable that you're going to see another move like this one right up there. NVIDIA is something good to pay attention to because I believe you can really pay attention to it if none of these head and shoulders start to play out and we actually head to lower levels or get that sudden, some kind of crash. Okay, so we can pay attention to that while looking at NVIDIA, but right now, I'll tell you what I'm leaning towards. We did come and fill this gap up here, so that's good. That's the target they probably had And we could see more buying into this move with the FOMOers stepping in, and stuff like that. But I'm still paying attention to this gap fill level right here of about 420. Okay, 420 looks pretty good. And the reason I say that you can use Amazon as your kind of crash indication is if you get that closing below about 375. If you get that closing below 375, I believe you're heading towards this gap down here around 303. So NVIDIA is just a good one to be heads up to the downside in case things don't play out the way that you're thinking, and you can say, oh, this is breaking some key levels or closing below those key levels. We don't want to be wicking or anything like that. But it really looks like when NVIDIA does make this second dip down, we actually could see a very explosive move and maybe even get a touch of this little trend between our most recent two highs. I guess the real question for NVIDIA is, are we going to see this MACD most likely is going to cross over? We're going to see some kind of pullback, but if that pullback does come down to these levels and turn back up and we remain in that positive territory, I would expect a bigger move. Now, if this is more dramatic, right, and we see this come up lower, we start to see this MACD get pretty dang low, then I would be worried that the trend could continue downward at that point. So that's just why I'm looking at NVIDIA as a good crash indication for myself. The 10-year yield here, you're just holding up at that level that you need to hold up at this point. Okay, we're going to see some data drops and things like that. Jerome Powell talking, so we could see this thing make that right shoulder, right? That's what we're paying attention to. Some kind of right shoulder, some kind of hip fire move in the 10-year yield to then drag down some of those tech stocks. Okay, so that's what we're paying attention to in the yield. And let's go over to TLT. This is what we're paying attention to with TLT, and that would be some kind of head and shoulders, right? We're paying attention to a lot of head and shoulders. Maybe this comes down into a deeper level, or something like that. But with TLT, the main thing that we're pointing out is the difference between the SPY, right? So the SPY is actually seeing this trickle up and then kind of fading right now. But we're actually seeing that the TLT is actually dropping off. Even with a gap higher today, you're still seeing the market go higher while the TLT is down. So if you will, SPY is going like this, TLT is going like this. It could be a signal that we actually want the overall market to head to lower levels, and maybe these TLT traders are correct. Kind of like TLT, another reason is you're not seeing the VIX sell off anymore, right? You have plenty of room in this Bollinger Band to sell off, but as the market, trickles higher, as the Qs trickle higher, we're not seeing that proven in the VIX. And we can look at VXN because that's the actual Qs volatility index, right? So we want to pay attention to both. And I do look at it. It's just right now you're not seeing the VIX head to extremely lower levels, when we are seeing a couple more inching up, right? So we really want to pay attention to this. We could start to flip over and carve out some kind of right shoulder and scare some people out until we get that bull run into the end of the year. And this is another one I just wanted to pull up the MACD on like a 30-minute, just so you can see. I mean, look how important it is. This trend can get into positive territory soon, meaning we can start to see this do the same thing this way, okay? So once we do get up towards that positive territory, yes, there is a bunch of divergences, a big divergence here, but the important part is we are close to that center line. We can get in positive territory on the VIX, and we can start to see a downward trend in the market and upward trend in the VIX. Overall takeaway from this video is we're actually seeing the market and Qs, SPY start to trickle up while the TLT and high yield growth are actually heading down, and maybe we need to pay attention to that because the TLT traders are right a lot of the time. Okay, so we want to pay attention to that, but at the same time, we could see some more wonky price action in the SPY before we get some kind of news to actually make us sell off. Okay, so it takes time, but overall, we just want to say, I hope you have all the luck in the world trading tomorrow, and I hope you have a good night, okay? Peace.